Hey, it's Ms. D. We are picking up where we left off with part 2 of Mesopotamia. So in the last video, we talked about the first written language developed in Mesopotamia, which was cuneiform, invented by the Sumerians and adopted by the Babylonians, who used it to create the Code of Hammurabi, which was the first written legal code, which was posted around the Babylonian Empire. There was also a second written language that comes out of Mesopotamia. This one was developed by the Phoenicians, who created the first alphabet, where each letter represented a different sound. So this is very influential. It's credited as being the basis for many languages that come out of Eurasia. And part of the reason why it is so influential is because the Phoenicians were such great sailors. They were advanced in shipbuilding. They were able to survey the Mediterranean Sea. They're credited with inventing the keel, putting a battering ram on the bow of their ship, and caulking between the planks of their boats to ensure that their boats were waterproof. If you're not familiar with what a keel is, that's the design of ships where it has that kind of triangular bottom. That's very, as opposed to if you've ever seen like a flat bottom raft. When you design the ship with this angular bottom, it allows it to hold much more cargo without sinking. In addition, it also keeps the boat much more steady in rough waters. So please bear in mind that the Phoenicians were very advanced, but they did not yet have the compass. The compass is a much more advanced piece of technology. That's not going to come out for a while. So when we're looking at people being able to cross the Atlantic Ocean, that's going to require the compass as well as some other naval technologies. At this point, the Phoenicians are limited to the Mediterranean Sea, which they did establish a really a great trade network between the city-states of Mesopotamia. They traded with the early Greeks, the Italian peninsula, North Africa. They even left the Mediterranean Sea and traveled north, hitting France and England, as well as south towards the coast of Africa, some of the coastal cities of Africa. Another great advancement that came out of Mesopotamia is the use of iron, which is credited to the Hittites. The Hittites were the first to smelt iron way back in 2500 BC. But as you can see, the Iron Age really doesn't start until 1200 BCE. So it takes a while for this technology to catch on and to spread. Now, before they used iron, they did use bronze. Anybody who's ever, played Minecraft or had like a silver or gold necklace that's gotten broken or bent, that different metals, or some metals are softer than others. So bronze was a softer metal, which is why it had a lower heating point. So you only had to heat bronze up to 950 degrees Celsius. So, if you're able to, once you're working with like pottery and things like that, that's pretty good heat that you would use just in a kiln. But bronze required you to have both tin and copper and combine the two, which were harder to get your hands on. They required trade networks to open up, and it was costly to get those raw materials. Iron ore, in contrast, was very readily available in Eurasia as well as in the African continent. So the raw material was easier. The problem was you had to be able to get the temperature up to about 1500 degrees. This is knowledge that, like I said, it's credited to the Hittites. The Hittites were first, but you should be aware that in sub-Saharan Africa, so again, sub-Saharan meaning the groups south of the Sahara Desert, they also came up with iron technologies. This is an example of what we call parallel development. What happens is there was no cultural diffusion between sub-Saharan Africa and Eurasia. All right, that was limited to North Africa. Those civilizations below the Sahara came up with this knowledge on their own, independent of what was going on in Eurasia. It is not until 700 BCE in China that we get cast iron. So the difference is cast iron is where you get the metal so hot, you're not just working it with hammers and things like that, you're getting the metal so hot that it actually turns into liquid. So you can pour that molten metal into a cast. So you would pour it into a form, and then you'd be able to make your object, take it out, let it cool, and then take it out of the form, which gives you much more advanced design options. So as you can see, it allows you to make plows and all kinds of tools, as well as really beautiful art. Okay, and the knowledge of iron was limited to the Eastern Hemisphere. The civilizations of the Western Hemisphere, all the Americas, do not have it. That's part of the reason why when the conquistadors, Christopher Columbus, when they make contact with the indigenous people of the Americas, they have their weaponry is much more advanced because they were still using bronze. That is also true for the civilizations of the Pacific. So, your Australias, a lot of the other island areas, they also did not have it. This was limited to, as I said, Eurasia and sub-Saharan Africa. Another civilization you should be aware of is the Assyrian Empire. Again, there was Assyrian, there was also the Neo-Assyrians, so the new Assyrians, but just to know, the Assyrians are most well known as being a really just tremendous fighting force. If you look at the bottom left, that is actually from that's the Metropolitan Museum of Art. You can actually see that in person. So really advanced, beautiful architecture and art, but also really well known for their armies and being able to conquer great areas of the ancient world. As you can see in the map, their empire included Mesopotamia. They went into what we think of today as part of Turkey, Asia Minor, and even all the way into Egypt, where they were able to conquer the Egyptian Empire. And of course, as I said, the Assyrians, you can kind of get an idea. Again, the city-states of Mesopotamia did fight each other. Power was kind of switched back and forth, and the great civilizations of Mesopotamia will be eventually conquered by the Persians in 539. And so all of the city-states will be absorbed into the Persian Empire, which we will learn about in a future lesson. All right, with that, we are done with part 2. I will see you in class. Bye-bye.